Most of the girls and boys that I know applied to North York day camps for playground assistants and counselors, and most of them were refused, so a lot of them are just sort of bumming around the city, you know, just doing nothing and going swimming and things like that. And a few of them got jobs at some other day camps. So I guess it's kind of hard, you know.
Well, those girls had jobs. The employment centers say there are jobs available this summer for students who want them. You just have to look a bit harder than you did last year. Well, some, however, agree with the 12,000 high school students who claim that there literally are no jobs for the unskilled student who wants to earn summer money, or more importantly, next year's university tuition. People like Les Birmingham and Georgina Solomar have started a project called SEED, and that's a name that will be explained a little bit later on in the interview you're to see, as they talk with Linda Hodges and 3 high school students who don't have jobs.
All right, our group is called SEED, and SEED means a Summer of Experience, Exploration, and Discovery. And as I say, the chairman of the board knew that this problem was there, so Mr. Hope formed an ad hoc committee of people from the various departments at the board and in the community, people like Georgina here, who's at the Dropout Center, and people from the, not a dropout, I dropped in, I'm sorry, Georgina. I'd drop in too if I had the chance. This type of group, and then the people from the social agencies and other people who we thought would have an interest and would know what was available. And the energy of this group went soaring. And since the 20th of June, which was the first day this really got off the rock, we've come up with a potential program.
One of the basic things, this is not to help our students who need money, because we certainly cannot provide them with jobs or really with skills that will help to get jobs, unless, of course, a group of them decide to get together to learn something that will help them get a job next year. This is a completely free educational program that will depend almost entirely on those students or other people who volunteer.
Now, what does the program consist of?
The program consists of, as far as I can see, everything that the students will be interested in learning or discussing. There is no set program. I don't think anybody wanted a set program.
Ron, would you go for something like this?
Well, it seems like a very nice program for people who don't really want a job. But I don't think I would get involved in it because I don't really see any true purpose, the purpose for the person who is participating in it. I don't really know if he creates something or feels that he has done something worthwhile, where if you were working or doing volunteer work or something, you at least have some satisfaction of knowing that you're doing something that's benefit to somebody.
Can I? You go ahead. I know what you're going to say. Throw it in.
I don't know whether this is a problem of our society or just the educational system, but I don't really think that we can look at any sort of an educational experience as worthless because you're not earning money or you're not doing something as such. Education is pretty well a good thing on its own.
Hi everyone, Francis McInerney here. I've got a great story to tell you about the founding of SEED. It's this. You can imagine, egotistical young man, 18. I started an underground newspaper at my high school called Lollipop for Lawrence Park, LP. Lollipop is not a sucker was the moniker. Saw an article in the Star, I think it was, about SEED being founded. And I went down to do a story, and I was going to show them, you know, that they didn't know anything. Got down there, met Les, and Les said to me, you know, we're closing today because we don't understand what it takes to get folks in here. And, you know, we're board professionals and we know how to run schools, but this kind of experiment, we don't know. So I happen to have with me my notebooks from a church youth group that had been closed, that I helped start, and had that notebook right there. I said to him, Les, give me a phone, give me an hour, and I'll give you a school, and if I don't, shut the thing down. Hour later, we had SEED. We had the critical mass for SEED. Went on for the rest of the summer, pulling things together, getting getting resource people together with students, arranging courses and classes. And that's what I did, spent the summer doing it. And Les was the first person in my life to say yes. And I've never looked back. I think it's a great story. It's got to be told. It's one of those wonderful things that someone does for a young kid. And my whole life has been unbelievable since what he did for me. Thank you, Les Birmingham.
It's hard to believe that it's half a century since a group of students who couldn't find summer jobs and a group of elementary school teachers in Toronto were concerned about it, and we came up with the idea of a summer of exploration and discovery, called it SEED. And that fall I got elected to the school board, and those students came back and said, how about us having a full-time credit program, and we'll call it a school for exploration, experience and discovery. That's what we did, that's what's happened, and here it is, half a century later. Congratulations, everybody.
Hi, I'm Cory Doctorow. I'm a SEED graduate. I think I graduated in 91 or 92. I definitely hung around for a few years after that, and actually hung around a few years before I was enrolled too. And that kind of is emblematic of what I want to say about SEED, which it was a place where you could just hang around. It was a place where you could goof off. In a world where today my time is sliced into these like infinitesimal fragments, you know, really sometimes too small to really formulate a full-fledged thought in. SEED was a place where you could slice time very thick in these very generous slices. You could sit on the sofa, you could do what I did. I spent a year organizing street protests against the invasion of Iraq. You could do stuff that kind of qualified as goofing off and not get any credits, but that nevertheless gave you kind of the mental space to think through some of the big issues and make some great leaps. Because that's another thing that happened for me at SEED is some real great leaps in my political understanding, in my technical understanding, particularly my artistic understanding. These days I'm a novelist and wrote a bunch of those books back there. So, you know, it's a thing that I think we've really lost sight of. I'm the father of a 10-year-old. I live in Southern California in a little city called Burbank, just outside of LA. And my kid goes to a great school, but it's not a school where she gets to slack off, even at 10, even in the 6th grade. So, I hope it's a thing we see the resurgence of someday, because goofing off, it's like one of the secret engines of ingenuity and of creativity and of measured thought. And it's something I miss about SEED. I hope current seedlings get a chance to goof off too.
SEED quite literally changed my life. I was really bottoming out at high school. In fact, I managed to get a doctor's certificate saying I didn't have to do the last exams. High school was incredibly banal. The world was this big, extraordinary place and all of these wonderful ideas in it. And then there was high school. And I just didn't think I could cope anymore. And thank God I got in on the lottery to SEED. I don't know what would have happened otherwise. I certainly would have quit high school. I probably would have hitchhiked to Vancouver, and the rest would have been a very different story. But I got into SEED, and SEED could give me a place to be with all of those big ideas. There were other people like me. I managed to take 12 different courses in the 1 year. It was fine to want more at SEED. And I think the biggest thing was that I felt I was respected for who I was, and that my ideas were respected. I was heard, and I could make choices. I could feel I was in control of my life to some degree, which I think is what you really need to feel when you're 15 and 16. And I think the biggest thing I've carried forward from SEED in my life, I've done a lot of teaching of young people, not, I hasten to say, in a public school situation, but a lot of teaching in various areas. And the biggest thing for me is carrying forward this knowledge that they must be respected for who they are, that they need to be listened to, they need to feel that they are in control of their lives, that they have choices. It's made a huge difference to me to be able to relate to young people that way. I think it's made a difference to them that I've felt that way about them. And it's made all the difference in the choices I've made in my life.
For me, Seed was an opportunity, and it was really all about opportunity. And when I look back at it, I can see the classes that I was involved in, the people that I met, the teachers that I formed relationships and friendships with. And I look at all those things and realize that they were all stepping stones for my future. And I really think that as I look back upon all those things, that it was really a turning point in my life.
My name is Gail Chapman Gray. I was first introduced to Seed through Arthur Wharton. I went to the winter and summer programs, but when it came to signing on to Seed, I decided to go into the lottery. When my name, together with number 99, was chosen, it's a moment I remember screaming for pure joy. Seed provided a threefold blessing in my life. First, it was an opportunity for a second chance to make my life and my education better. I completed grade 12 and 13 in 1 year. I spent countless hours with Bob Beardsley, being mentored on my math. I loved my courses with Alan Anderson and media. There's so many great opportunities that I had to complete that grade, and every instructor and Catalyst worked diligently to make sure I achieved that goal. The second opportunity was that Seed was a safe haven. It was a safe place of refuge for me. There are many turbulent and traumatic events that happened in my life at that time, such that I needed that. I could sit quietly in Murray's office and just feel refuge and safety. I felt safe with every instructor, and the kids there were really a loving group. I just remember a lot of great conversations. It was a place I could go to. The third thing that Seed did, it was a door that opened up to the future for me. It opened up in terms of being able to take that one-on-one mentoring and apply it to indigent refugees and Latinos that I teach ESL to. But most importantly, it opened up a door because I met a young man named Douglas Gray there, actually through Lorraine. And we became friends, and a few years later we married. So that's been the greatest blessing. And I want to thank everyone who had that initial beginning with Seed, because my life would be very different without it. Thank you.
Very cool. I want to talk to you a little bit about what Seed meant to me. Seed has meant a lot to me, but in thinking about it, I come down to a few key words. First of all, it was acceptance. That day that I walked in to the Education Center in 1968, the summer, I felt immediate acceptance from the people around me. An acceptance I didn't feel in my regular high school at the time, which wasn't working for me. The second important aspect of Seed for me was we got to meet some pretty amazing people. I remember even during that first and second summer meeting June Callwood, Alan Anderson, Peter Zosky, Marshall McLuhan. These were leaders in our day and time. I think the most important lesson for me going forward, which influenced my career as an educator, was that people learn through discovery. I used to run my classrooms. I used to tell my students, we're going to have today a rap session, just like we did in the old days.
Oh my God, Seed. I got there in the fall of 1986 and stuck around till about 1990, 1991. And it was everything. It was Peter Wood's philosophy class, which they wouldn't let us call a philosophy class because the Toronto Board of Ed said that high school students weren't mature enough to study philosophy. So we had to call it a social science class, even though we were reading Kant and Hegel and Marx. It was the women's studies class that was led by Vid Lake, who was the catalyst, and which gathered together this incredible group of brilliant, fierce, radical women who I learned so much from. But for me, more than anything, it was the writer's workshop with Harriet Wolfe, whose voice I can still hear in my head when I write. Merely clever. And it was meeting week in and week out with budding, promising writers who taught me how to write, like for real. And every one of them is still with me now that I teach at the University of Toronto. The best thing about Seed was that there were kids there from every kind of background. Like, there were really well-off kids who had gone to really good schools before coming to Seed. There were working-class kids like me from the West End or the East End of the city. And there were poverty-class kids who lived on the street and could get student welfare because they were enrolled at Seed. And for a few hours every week, we could sit at the same table and learn together as equals. And I'll admit that when I went to university a few years later, I was really disappointed because it wasn't like Seed at all. But I'm enormously grateful to have had those experiences. And I hope that kids can have access to that for another 50 years. Thanks, everyone.
Seed was a revelation. It opened up the city to me. It taught me how to learn independently. It taught me actually that you could actually learn things, not just that somebody had to teach it to you, but you could learn something. And also, suddenly I was with a whole bunch of kids like me who were bright, and I didn't have to hide my intelligence for the first time in my life. I have gone on to teach myself how to be a television director, how to be a landscape designer, how to be a video artist, even how to be a dancer. Not because I went to school, but because other people taught me and I learned things from them.
Hi, I'm Robin Sundstrom. Picture I'm holding is me at about age 17. Like most 17-year-olds, full of angst and anger and frustration. But I was lucky. I was lucky because I was at Lawrence Park, where people like Frances and Lorraine McInerney, Arthur and Marion Morton, and John McGrath also attended. It meant that I was involved in Seed almost from the very start, and it really was a rich experience. At the outset, I was attending classes evenings and weekends, a huge variety of subjects, from how to operate a video camera to cosmology to psychology to how to make a city a livable place. It also meant that at one point I was sitting at the feet of Marshall McLuhan, literally, and that was quite heady even at the time. Learning at Seed in those early days felt dangerous because for the first time in many of our lives we were being treated as peers, not pests. It also taught us that learning and teaching were part of a continuum because I think we could see our catalysts learn as they taught us, and we were certainly learning. And we went on to teach other people as well. How did it change my life? It taught me that rules were circumventable. With sufficient drive, energy, and will, you could go over, under, and around them in order to shift the world to your liking. Pretty nice to know at age 17 when you're facing a world of bureaucracy. It also taught me that I wanted to be teaching and learning all my life, but probably not in a formal setting. In addition, it taught me that different people needed different ways of learning. Some people flourished at Seed, others didn't. I was lucky to be one of those who did well. Well for me. It also changed my family's life. Partway through year 1 after Seed became a formal school, I dragged my mother down to the JCC because the office needed some support. She went on to become a catalyst, then a teacher, then the coordinator. And that changed our family's life. And it was a wonderful way to bond with my mother. I have a lot to thank Seed for.
My parents were both educators, and I came to Seed understanding that education was something that came from instructors and came out of textbooks. And at Seed, I quickly learned that education about mathematics and history is equivalent to and cousin to education about yoga and photography and street theater. And that education doesn't just come from educators, it comes from your peers and from anybody in the community who knows something you don't know. And that was very timely information for me. And it informed my thoughts about what my education was for the rest of my life in a good way. So thank you, Seed. And thanks to my fellow seedlings.
Happy 50th, Seed. Mary Rykov here, President for Life, self-appointed, of Gone to Seed, the 2012 1968 to 70s reunion we had, at least for those we could find. I am so looking forward to all 50 years of Seed School. How amazing is that? And I'm so grateful for Les Birmingham, Fiona Nelson, and our dearly departed Murray Shukyn for liberating us from high school hell and enabling a life-shaping experience. I won't say more because I've put all my seeds into one basket of an essay for Canadian Notes and Queries called Sowing Seed, about the inception of Seed School from 1968 to 70s when it gained school board sanction. So look for it in November 2018 in Canadian Notes and Queries, issue 103, and I will look for all of you. And I'm so looking forward to celebrating with you on October 20th. Happy 50th, Seed.
In 1968, I was just 5 years old, and I remember sitting under a desk in the basement of the JCC and watching the barefoot teenagers, as I called them, and being awed and inspired. My father was Murray Shukyn. He was a visionary educator, and he was involved at the very beginning of Seed and for many years afterwards. My mother is Bev Shukyn. She is a retired leader in the vocational rehabilitation, and actually together they wrote a book called You Can't Take a Bathtub on a Subway, and that was all about the startup of Seed. My name is Debora. I am a program development consultant, an educator myself, and a coach. And my life's work is much the same as my parents in helping marginalized people enact their strengths, access education that is transformative in nature. And so I never finished high school. I probably was the perfect student for Seed, but I just couldn't go there because it was my dad's school. And so now I am just finishing my master's degree. It is in adult education. And I think my dad would have really been tickled that I got to do so without having finished high school and without having an undergrad. I heard somebody in this video talk a little bit earlier about the value of knowing how and when to circumvent the rules. And I think that's definitely something that I learned from my dad. And so in sometimes in research and development and program evaluation, we look at what are the unintended outcomes of a given project. And what I want to say is this, is that my father's work at SEED, my mother's work in social services, and to some degree my work in education and in research are all inspired through SEED. And so I want to wish everyone a happy 50th and many, many more intended and unintended outcomes. Thank you.
I retired in 1986 from teaching. I now spend my time with tee-off, feeding school children. I also enjoy going to concerts, theater, and time with family and friends. I am also a great-grandfather of twins. When we began SEED, we had no idea what it was going to be and what it could do and how many people were going to be involved. SEED must have been good because many of the seedlings succeeded in their lives. Now that SEED is in its 50th year, I think it's most fortunate experience I had.
I've always appreciated that SEED removed the machine taste from my educational experience and allowed us to explore so much more than the directed curriculum. But digging a bit deeper into the ripples SEED has created in my life, one of the most valuable impacts for me is the connection to a like-minded group of people. This is somewhat rare. I feel we're extremely fortunate to be part of such a synergy, both in the sense of fellowship, but also in the potential to create a more positive world around us. I've been so deeply touched by this realization. It's opened me up to an even greater flow with other people. And in fact, one night I woke up and the muse of poetry, who visits me rather seldomly, sent me a little flow, and so here's an ode to y'all. Because we're family down to our river hearts, because we play and splash to each other's delight, because we share thoughts known to the travelers of this path, we are our own gift. We are the raison d'être. We are each other's joy, and we are enough. The lesson is the light we have cast for each other, for the love we create as a group, for that shared experience that informs our passage. We are the lesson. Oh, Coco. Hello, baby. Aw.